Welcome to the Kapital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is September 25th, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me. Where do we even begin today? Obviously, we are in the second day of this formal impeachment inquiry. This is going to take place over the coming weeks, if not months, so buckle up and get used to it. There is going to be one bombshell, quote-unquote bombshell, after the next being lobbed from the Democrats to the president, and from the president and his administration and his supporters to the Democrats. This is doing nothing to unite this country. This is further division. Now, we do have the quote-unquote transcript that was released from the White House this afternoon or this morning, and we asked the question yesterday, well, what is a transcript? I gave you my definition, which is the actual definition of what a transcript is, and then we said, well, what's a transcript in the mind of President Donald J. Trump? We're going to get to that, and I'm going to read some of the transcript. I would imagine a handful of you probably took the time to read it at some point during the day or have come across it on other media outlets, because this is not an in-depth document. It's only about 5 pages long. The vast majority of it is a lot of niceties, a lot of hello, how you doing, congratulations on the election victory, a whole bunch of flattery. Obviously, the world is understanding that if you want to get on Donald Trump's good side, you flatter him, you praise him. And that's exactly what the Ukrainian president was doing for a good portion of this phone conversation. So we're going to get to that. But first, I do want to focus on the markets real quick so we can get that out of the way. The S&P was up 18 points. The Dow gained 163. The NASDAQ gained 84, an increase of 1%. The Russell 2000 gained 17 points, also an increase of 1% on the day. The Dow Jones Transports was also up 1%. The New York Stock Exchange gained 0.4%. So, why the turnaround? Yesterday was in the red, today we're in the green. Well, you guessed it, and this is, it's all connected. U.S.-China trade talks. The president, ladies and gentlemen, cannot help himself. I outlined what I thought perhaps the president was going, was going to do with all of this coming out, with all of these bombshells, with now the formal impeachment inquiry against him, that he now had, in my opinion, the dominoes lined up. If something would turn south in the economy or the market, he could wash his hands of it, and he could start blaming Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the Democrats, continue to blame the Fed, continue to blame China. I can't make a deal with anybody because the Democrats have handcuffed me. Nobody trusts me. I can't get anything done because I'm not a dictator. It has to go through Congress, and right now they're trying to impeach me. Apparently, I'm giving this guy too much credit or he just cannot help himself, because the markets were down yesterday, as we outlined during yesterday's podcast. But today, the president does a 180, because yesterday at the UN General Assembly during his speech, he was flexing his muscles. He was playing the tough guy. China, you've been ripping us off for 30 years. China, you're hiding behind the laws of the WTO. No bueno. Can't have it. You don't follow the rules then, you don't follow them now, and we don't expect that you're going to follow them in the future. I don't want a bad deal. I don't want a partial deal. I want a complete deal, and it has to be good and better for the United States than it is for you. Markets didn't like that. He knows this, but he said it anyway. Today he comes out. Oh, folks, listen now. Listen. You might be surprised. There might be a deal sooner than what a lot of people are expecting. You can't make this stuff up. If you worked or resided within an insane asylum, you wouldn't see this type of nonsense. We see it on a daily basis. This is getting out of hand, and the markets continue to rally on it because this is computer-based trading. That's what's going on here. They're scouring the websites, they're scouring the internet for these types of trade stories, these events. They view this as a positive, so they buy. They bid everything up, and that's exactly what they continue to do. So much for artificial intelligence and machine learning. I mean, if you have 2 brain cells to rub together, you understand that this has been nothing. This has been a joke for the past year and a half. Whether it's from the president, whether it's from Peter Navarro, whether it's from Larry Kudlow, whether it's from Stephen Mnuchin, Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, you name it. Anybody from this administration. The markets are down. Go out there, say everything's fine with U.S.-China trade, And lo and behold, the markets rally. Well, that's exactly what happened today because the markets were drifting lower once again. Donnie Boy didn't like it. Had to make a statement in regards to U.S.-China. Now, the interesting thing is, and finally, it's about time we finally have somebody in the press corps because Donald Trump gave a press conference this afternoon. I mean, he pretty much had to with all of the news that's going on. Plus, it was a way for him to further explain what he was doing at the UN for the past few days. Finally, a reporter had the balls to finally ask the President of the United States, and wouldn't you know it, it happened to be a woman. It happened to be a woman. I believe a Greek woman, so kudos to my fellow Greek out there for having the nerve to ask the president a very simple question, and I believe she was from Fox Business. You talk about U.S.-China trade talks. You go back and forth. I'm paraphrasing. You go back and forth, but now you're saying today that you're expecting a deal sooner than what most people were thinking. Can you elaborate? Can you provide specifics? A very simple question. Can you provide specifics? That's what we've been asking here for months. No, I'd rather not do that. I'd rather not do that. Rather not or cannot? I think that you cannot do it because there are no specifics. Because this is just a headline to further manipulate the markets. That's exactly what this is. So we're going to get into all of this because there's other news out that broke shortly before I started this podcast that the actual whistleblower complaint, has been declassified. Now, earlier today, it was sent to Congress, and it was held within a SCIF, SCIF, which is basically a safe room for members of Congress within the intelligence community to go in there, or on the intelligence committee, I should say, who can go in there and read the complaint. Okay? Now, they're not allowed to come out and tell you what was in it. They can give you a very brief synopsis. They can use a couple words to describe it, which they did, but they cannot give you vital details. Well, like I said, before I just started this podcast, there were several lawmakers on Twitter who were saying that the document, the complaint, the whistleblower complaint has been declassified. Now, to my knowledge, it has not yet been posted anywhere for the public to see. There might still be a process that has to go through before it is made known to the people. But there is going to be some testimony taking place tomorrow, and it may continue through the rest of this week as well, but we will see. But I wanted to let you know that the whistleblower complaint has been made, it has been declassified. When it's going to be made public, we're just going to have to wait and see on that one. Continuing with some of the market news, we have oil pretty much flat from yesterday's podcast. WTI is at $56.50 a barrel. Brent is at $62.50 a barrel. Gold and silver got pummeled today, especially silver. Gold is at $1,511. Silver at $17.97. A lot of this, I think, was on the back of the such positive breaking news around U.S.-China trade progress, or the lack thereof. But nevertheless, that's what happened. The dollar rallied, and so you had that old-fashioned relationship. If the dollar's strong, precious metals tend to weaken, as other commodities did as well. The U.S. 10-year Treasury, the yield gained 6%. So there was a selling of bonds. We are now yielding 1.73%. So there's a rotation out of safe haven assets, precious metals, U.S. Treasuries, getting into the stock market. We also have the VIX losing 6 percentage points for the day, and the volatility index is now at $15.96. And just to keep score for FedEx and U.S. Steel, FedEx gained about 3 percentage points for today, and U.S. Steel gained about 7% in today's trading session. But remember, folks, U.S. Steel was about $11 a share. Nevertheless, 7% is 7%, so we'll keep you posted if there's a turnaround in that. Clearly, the market perhaps overshot to the downside, and now there are just some people who are trying to scalp some profits on the upside. Clearly, there's value with U.S. Steel. The question is, how sustaining will that be? We'll keep you posted on that. So that's sort of the economic news for today, simply because there's so much political news that's out there. And I just want to have that discussion more broadly today as opposed to the economic stuff. So let's get to some of this transcript, or what is being put out there as a transcript. And it even says on the transcript itself, and I'm not making this up, it says caution. It says caution at the bottom of the first page. A memorandum of a telephone conversation is not a verbatim transcript of a discussion. The text in this document records the notes and recollections of Situation Room duty officers and NSC policy staff assigned to listen and memorialize the conversation in written form as the conversation takes place. A number of factors can affect the accuracy of the report, including poor telecommunication connections and variations in accent and or interpretation. The word, quote, inaudible is used to indicate portions of a conversation that the note taker was unable to hear. Now, this thing, like I said, it kickstarts with a lot of happy talk. How you doing? Everything's great, fantastic, yada, yada, yada. Hope you're well. Say hi to your mother for me. All that type of stuff, okay? Then it gets into continue with some of the other meat and potatoes of that, all right? So we have, let's see here. We have Donald Trump saying, well, it's very nice of you to say that. I will say that we do a lot for Ukraine. We spend a lot of effort and a lot of time, much more than the European countries are doing, and they should be helping you more than they are. Germany does almost nothing for you, and all they do is talk, and I think it's something that you should really ask them about. When I was speaking to Angela Merkel, she talks Ukraine, but she doesn't do anything. A lot of the European countries are the same way, so I think it's something you want to look at, but the United States has been very, very good to Ukraine. I wouldn't say that it's reciprocal necessarily because things are happening that are not good, but the United States has been very, very good to Ukraine. President Zelensky. Yes, you are absolutely right. Not only 100%, but actually 1,000%. And I can tell you the following. I did talk to Angela Merkel, and I did meet with her. I also met and talked with Macron, and I told him that they are not doing quite as much as they need to be doing on the issues with the sanctions. They are not enforcing the sanctions. They are not working as much as they should for Ukraine. It turns out that even though logically the European Union should be our biggest partner, but technically the United States is a much bigger partner than the European Union, and I'm very grateful to you for that because the United States is doing quite a lot for Ukraine. Much more than the European Union, especially when we are talking about sanctions against the Russian Federation. I would also like to thank you for your great support in the area of defense. We are ready to continue to cooperate for the next step. Specifically, we are almost ready to buy more javelins from the United States for defense purposes. And there he's talking about a weapons program. Donald Trump, I would like you to do us a favor, though. And here's the key word. I would like you to do us a favor, though, and we're going to talk about this. Because our country has been through a lot, and Ukraine knows a lot about it. I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine. They say CrowdStrike. I guess you have one of your wealthy people, the server. They say Ukraine has it. There are a lot of things that went on it, the whole situation. I think you're surrounding yourself with some of the same people. I would like to have the Attorney General call you or your people, and I would like you to get to the bottom of it. As you saw yesterday, that whole nonsense ended with a very poor performance by a man named Robert Mueller. An incompetent person, an incompetent performance. But they say a lot of it started with Ukraine. Whatever you can do, it's very important that you do it if that's possible. President Zelensky. Yes, it is very important for me and everything that you just mentioned earlier. For me as a president, it is very important. We are open for any future cooperation. We are ready to open a new page on cooperation and relations between the United States and Ukraine. For that purpose, I just recalled our ambassador from the United States, and he will be replaced by a very competent and very experienced ambassador who will work hard on making sure that our two nations are getting closer. And then I'm going to skip down a little bit. I would also like and hope to see him having your trust and your confidence and have personal relations with you so we can cooperate even more so. I will personally tell you that one of my assistants spoke with Mr. Giuliani just recently, and we are hoping very much that Mr. Giuliani will be able to travel to Ukraine, and he will meet once he comes to Ukraine. Now, that's also interesting. Pay attention to Mr. Giuliani because that's something I have a lot of questions on. Skipping down a little bit, Donald Trump. Good, because I heard you had a prosecutor who was very good, and he was shut down. And that's really unfair. A lot of people are talking about that. The way they shut your very good prosecutor down and you had some very bad people involved. Mr. Giuliani is a highly respected man. He was the mayor of New York City, a great mayor. And I would like him to call you. I will ask him to call you along with the Attorney General. Rudy, being Rudy Giuliani, very much knows, excuse me, what's happening, and he is a very capable guy. If you could speak to him, that would be great. The former ambassador from the United States, the woman, was bad in news that the people she was dealing with in the Ukraine were bad news. So I just want to let you know that. The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution, so if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me. And they continue. Reading the way that Donald Trump speaks is not an easy task. It is not. He stops mid-sentences. I mean, the sentences and the words he strings together, it's almost pathetic, but that's the way he talks, and that's what it is. And this thing continues to go on, but that's about it. That is really about it. I was taking the time today to see what the mainstream media was talking about this evening, and I was focused pretty much on CNN. I was watching a little bit of Fox News earlier, and like I said yesterday, and what I said to be on the lookout for is everybody's going to get siloed in, and that's exactly what is taking place. It's what has been taking place, and it is going to continue, because you have CNN, who is pretty much anti-Trump, siloed in. We're anti-Trump. This is a damning document. This is a smoking gun. All you have to do is rub your brain cells together. Now, clearly the president didn't come out and say, you owe me, you got to do this, or this, that, or the other. There was no threatening, there was no great pressure, but you got to read between the lines. You got to see it. Okay, now it's perfectly okay for the House of Representatives to move forward with articles of impeachment. As far as CNN's concerned, this is it. He's done, dead to rights. If you listen to Fox News, Donald Trump is perfectly fine. There is no there. This is not a smoking gun. The president's allowed to ask for a favor. Isn't that politics? You got to look into Joe Biden. You got to look into his son, Hunter Biden. That's what you have to look into. The president of the United States has nothing to do with this. He's perfectly above board. He's doing what he can do to protect this country. Everybody's siloed in. And I said, you got to stay away from it. I mean, I'm not happy that I spent as much time as I did personally, to be honest with you, watching Fox News this evening and watching CNN. But it's interesting to do it because, if you're trying to get yourself out of the bubble and you're trying to just do a little bit of an experiment just to observe what is being discussed, that's exactly what it is. We also had a little bit of fake news out this afternoon. I believe it was the Washington Post that stated this afternoon that the acting director of national intelligence was threatening to resign if he was not going to be allowed to testify before Congress. Okay? He later puts out a statement. The acting director of national intelligence puts out a statement himself saying, I never threatened to resign or quit. I've never quit anything in my life, and I'm not going to start now. So that was a bunch of fake news. Now, is the Washington Post, are they going to hold that reporter accountable? Is that person going to be fired? Are they going to be, put on leave? I mean, what's the action here? Because I said this yesterday, and it's quite the shame. Who do you trust? This podcast is about peace and prosperity, free market capitalism, and the truth where we can find it. And unfortunately, the truth is getting harder and harder to uncover, to interpret, to understand, to find it. Where is it? Peace and prosperity, we're praying for it. We hope it happens. But we have endless wars going all over the place. Free market capitalism, we're not even close to that. But those are the ideals that we believe here, and that's why I talk about those things. But you have this whole thing here, and I read this earlier this morning. This transcript, whatever you want to call it, this document. And I said, I'm scratching my head. And I said, this is not any type of smoking gun against the President of the United States. I mean, isn't this politics? Don't politicians ask each other for favors? Isn't that the horse trading that takes place behind the scenes? Isn't that what we all expect them to do? If you vote for my bill, I'll vote for yours down the line. If you help me out here, I'll help you out there. Is that illegal? I mean, I thought that was politics. That's business. What's the big deal here? Well, I guess if you want to infer that you have to read between the lines that Donald Trump is withholding things, which in fact he did. He did withhold some military funding that was going to Ukraine. And I'm sure the president of Ukraine was aware of this. I'm sure he was. I mean, rarely are you ever going to have somebody say that I'm going to commit a crime. Here's going to be the victims. Here's going to be the location, the time, the weapon, or whatever I'm going to do. Perfectly outlined. There's not too many people dumb enough to do that. Okay, we had that whole conversation with Hillary Clinton and the email scandal and her working with her attorneys, which appears to be something very similar to this situation. This is almost very Clinton-esque, in my opinion, because I think, at least at this point, one of the main reasons why Hillary Clinton continues to skate on so many of these issues that are still outstanding as far as I'm concerned is because she worked very closely with her personal attorneys. Now, sometimes they were her personal attorneys and sometimes they were her aides as the Secretary of State. Anytime there might have been a damning question against her or put to her, I can't say anything, and neither can my attorney. At that point, when it became a serious question, that person was her personal attorney. Attorney-client privilege. We're not going to tell on each other. If it was nothing, if it was just some type of detail that didn't make any difference, oh yeah, that was my aide. You can just talk to her. She'll answer that question because in that capacity, she was acting as my aide, my chief of staff, strategist, anything, whatever. Makes no difference. Gets a tough question, personal attorney, attorney-client privilege. Well, now you have Mr. Giuliani in the midst, in the mix of all of this, which I'm still scratching my head about this one. Because over the past couple of weeks, you have seen Rudy Giuliani give some pretty interesting interviews, let's say. Some of them were on CNN with Chris Cuomo. Rudy Giuliani clearly got tongue-tied or tripped up because he was basically saying, yes, I did not do something, and then 2 seconds later, no, yes, I did. So basically, a few good men moment, you can't handle the truth, and yes, I did order the code red, that type of thing. And now you have Rudy going back and forth. I was in Ukraine. I was there on my own, but on behalf of the president, basically looking into this issue with the Bidens and all of this corruption that took place. That's what I was looking into, but I was doing that on my own, but for the betterment of the president, because obviously he's in the midst of an election and he's trying to dig up dirt. Now, probably not the smartest thing to do, given the fact that for the past 2 years you've been saying it's been a witch hunt because you've been accused of working with a foreign country to interfere in our election. Now that's exactly what Rudy Giuliani was pretty much going over there to do, to find dirt on a political opponent. Now you have Rudy Giuliani saying, and I went over there because the State Department sent me over there. I was on a mission, basically. I'm on a mission from the State Department to go over there and do something from the Ukraine. Now, the State Department, at least at this point, from what I have come across, has admitted that they knew Rudy Giuliani was going to the Ukraine. Did they send him on a mission? They're not going that far. They're not coming out and making that explicitly known. So that's still up in the air as to what Rudy Giuliani was actually doing. Furthermore, what's Rudy Giuliani doing over there? Because he is the personal attorney for Donald Trump. He's not a member of his cabinet. He's not the Secretary of State. He's not the ambassador of Ukraine. He's not a member of the State Department. He's Donald Trump's personal attorney. So this is why I'm saying it's Clinton-esque. If something happens, well, attorney-client privilege. I'm not going to say anything. You can't make me say anything. Attorney-client privilege. Work for the Clintons, it's going to work for us. That's speculation on my part, but that's just sort of the analysis that I'm putting together here. Because this whole thing with Rudy Giuliani is really what's throwing me for a loop. What's he doing? I mean, clearly this was not the smartest thing to do. Like I said, you just undergone the Mueller investigation for the past 2 years, being accused of coordinating with a foreign country. Now your personal attorney is over there in a foreign country to find dirt on a political opponent for the 2020 presidential campaign. And of course, we don't know if Joe Biden is going to be the nominee. We still got months to go before we're at that juncture. But nevertheless, he is a political opponent. Now, on the flip side, in further defense of the president to some degree, because watching and listening to CNN all night, it was, oh, this is ridiculous because Joe Biden is a political opponent. So what? Does that mean he's above the law? Does that mean he can't be investigated because he's a political opponent? That's ridiculous. I mean, if that's all it takes, everybody's just got to go sign up to be a politician. You'll never be prosecuted. You'll never be investigated. And if you are investigated, you're going to skate. Because all you got to do is commit the crime with your attorney. And nobody's going to rat each other out, so you're fine. That's the system, evidently, that exists within this country. So that was driving me crazy all night, listening to these people on CNN, because, well, the president, this is Joe Biden. No, he's, can't happen. He's a political opponent. You can't do this. What do you mean? If Joe Biden committed a crime, if his son committed a crime, investigate it. If President Donald Trump committed a crime, investigate it. For those of you who have been with this podcast for a while, I am not thrilled with the performance of this president at all. At all. You want to investigate him, invest him for market manipulation. You have nothing but evidence that he has been manipulating these markets. Nothing but evidence. I hope that he is not personally profiting from it, but we're not going to know unless an investigation takes place. Who knows what he is saying to his children, to a friend of a friend, or somebody in the cabinet? Who knows? Who knows? But he knows what he's going to tweet. He knows what statements are going to come out from the White House, either formally, a formal statement, or whether or not he's going to send one of his lackeys out there, Larry Kudlow or somebody, to say everything's fine. That is clearly market manipulation. There's nothing but evidence of it. Now, whether or not somebody's profiting from it is another question, but we're not going to know unless you investigate it. And I think that's honestly warranted, because that's an abuse of power. How these Democrats don't grasp this or understand this is beyond me. They want to keep going down all of these rabbit holes that even involves themselves. Because you had the whole Bob Mueller investigation, and the whole entire time you had a whole bunch of people on Fox News, a whole bunch of people on conservative radio talking about, no, this isn't Donald Trump. This is everything that the Democrats are guilty of. And then they went down the list. Here's Christopher Steele. Here's Hillary Clinton. Here's Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, Jim Comey, the whole list. We went through that. We went through that months ago. Now the Democrats are on him for Ukraine and Joe Biden. And now that's coming on. Well, Joe Biden was guilty of this, that, and the other. It's the same stuff. Go after him on market manipulation. Problem is, everybody and their mother's probably in on it. That's why they're not talking about it. Because you can make money, folks, on both sides of the coin. You can buy long, you can sell short. And if you know what Thunder Thumbs is going to be tweeting, you can make a lot of money. A lot of money very quickly in the options market. Because if you know what's coming down the pike, and you know it's positive, or you know it's negative, if you're positioned before that happens, you can make out like a bandit very, very quickly. And that's why it's an abuse of power. Because the president knows what the market's going to do, how it's going to respond. Or at least he has a pretty good idea how it's going to respond. Because we've had nothing but evidence as to how it's going to, as it has responded for the past several months. So that's my beef with all of this. There are still a whole bunch of uncertainties. The whistleblower document, again, has been declassified. Has it been made public at the time of this podcast? No, it has not. Will it be made public tomorrow? We will see. There is going to be testimony tomorrow in an open session. How in-depth will it get? Probably not that in-depth, because I'm sure there's going to be some other classified information that is not going to be made known, because I think it's still going to be a redacted version, even though it has been declassified. But we'll have to wait and see on all of those details. But those are sort of the key points as far as I'm concerned. As far as I see this is not a smoking gun. This is not a crime. Now, of course, impeachment, it doesn't have to rise to the true level, I guess you could say, of a crime. There's not a lot of great detail that is given to us in the Constitution. high crimes and misdemeanors. This becomes more of a political debate when it comes to impeachment as opposed to a legal one. Because we know from the Mueller investigation and from the lips of Bob Mueller himself, from the outset of that investigation, we were never going to go after Donald J. Trump. We were never going to prosecute him because of the precedent that exists within the Department of Justice that you do not prosecute a sitting U.S. president. So from the outset, they were never going to prosecute the president. So now it has to become a big political circus, a big political football, and that's what we're in the midst of. Now it's simply a formal impeachment inquiry, which for all intents and purposes is what it has been for the past several months, if not the past couple of years. The scary thing is, of course, this is coming down with the weight and gravity of the speakership from Nancy Pelosi. And remember, folks, Nancy Pelosi is third in line. Donald Trump, Mike Pence, Nancy Pelosi. God help us all. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Corritis. Godspeed.